Good evening, everyone. Can everyone hear me? Okay, good. This is the first time I've done a stream with audio, so sorry about the delay. The train simulator decided not to load at all, not even into the menu, so that was fun, as always. Right. Not sure exactly what's going on, but for some reason I don't have audio in my headphones. Can you guys hear the game audio okay? Should be able to hear the DJ idling away. Alright, well I'm not sure what's going on with this. Oh, hang on. Sorry about this. This is only the second time I've done a stream. Okay, so I thought we'd start off with do a stream of a scenario I've done before, except this time we'll be able to show off the updated textures and some of the improved frame rates as well that we've managed to get with the patch that we've been working on. So this is the same scenario if you've watched the previous stream I did. It was taking a Loco down to Aikens and picking up a train and bringing it back to Akira. As you can see, the textures have been improved a fair bit on the Locos. So the frame rate as well. So even with streaming and everything, I'm now getting about 50 frames per second in Akira, which is way better than it was, which is great. Right, so we'll head out onto the back shaft and head around over to the triangle to the location. Actually, I think something weird's going on with my video graphics settings. It's not as good as it was earlier when I was looking. Hang on. I know what's happened. Shall be back in a sec, guys. I'll restart that. Yeah, the room I'm in is quite echoey, so I'm trying to get the mic loud enough without getting a lot of echo in the background. I'd love to figure out why my audio is not working, game audio is not working, but anyway. I must have accidentally disabled dynamic lighting in clouds, that's why the graphics were so weird there for a sec. Right, so take 3. Let's see if we can head off around the triangle. So all of the overhead wires here in Arthur's Pass and Ontario, instead of actually being made with the game's gantry tools, it was all custom made as a 3D model, the entire overhead in about 4 different pieces, I think. So that was because the in-game tools didn't allow us to get the overhead representative of what it was like with the V-shaped overhead, which was unique to the area. Bit of a rise as you come out of that yard, and you've got to be careful with it. And typically I don't think I've stopped far enough back, so the points won't change. Yep, Loco's sitting right on the front of it. Now it's changed. We've got a yellow light to proceed. So now we're crossing onto the North Main so that we can back onto the triangle and turn the Loco around so we can go Longhood leading down to Aikens to couple onto the overheated Loco that's on the train there. Low speed light, so So once the delay is finished, we can back onto the triangle. The Locos are also scripted so that if you notch up very quickly, you'll get a big burst of black smoke as the engine adjusts to the new loading. Make sure the points are set. Yep. So we did a lot of research into trying to figure out all of the correct buildings to be in the area for when the route set, because the route set in the late 1960s, so just as the diesels are starting to come in and as the old EOs are about to be retired. We haven't modelled the new Toshiba electrics, but yeah, that's set just before they came into service. While we wait, make sure the points are set up. So we tried to get a lot of the details of the cabs having a realistic operation as well. So the battery ammeter, which sits in the middle of the cab, will actually, the reading will change depending on what you've got running, and if you stop the engine and you leave the lights running, the battery voltage will actually decrease, and there's a certain point at which, if you've decreased it too much, the Loco won't be able to be restarted if you've left the lights on with the engine off for too long, but it takes quite a while to do that. So being the end of the 60s, the new Loco shed by the triangle is now in place. There used to be a Loco shed over far side by the coaling ramp, and an old turntable there as well, but when the Locos got too big for the turntables, they put the triangle in. And at this point also the coal-fired powerhouse for the electrics has been stopped being used, and the substation you see over the back is now supplying the electricity for the overhead. So all the signals in Arthur's Pass, Otera and Springfield are all a form of CTC signal that were controlled by local signal panels. In between, outside those areas, it was all single line automatic. So we've had to custom make two signal systems to get this route to operate close to the way it does in real life. We tried to get it as close as we could, but I think there's probably ways it can be improved, but it's pretty close. So the lights, you've got front and rear tail lights, you've got your front and rear headlights. There's a few other switches which operate but don't really do anything such as the heater and the foot warmer. Your gauge lights and your ground lights. So there's working ground lights as well. And just to make sure everyone's awake, there's the alarm test button which operates as well. maximum speed. Yes, the front and rear headlight dimmer switches work as well. So on the D, I'll show you in a sec. So down by the driver's side here we've got the cab lights, sanding, anti-slip system, and the front and rear headlight dimmers. And this button here is the vigilance alarm reset. Stefan's just informed me that if you turn the cab heater on, you can actually hear it operating, so yeah. When we were creating the route, we found you use freely available terrain data now, which we imported into the game to see how it would look in a mountainous area like this, and it just it started out as just a test, and then we ended up spending 6 years working on it to make a route. So yeah, it's a slightly long sidetrack, I guess, but turned out pretty good. And similar things with the gradients and the curvatures of the track. We used gradient diagrams to try and get the track gradient and the curves to match as closely as we could to the real line as well. One thing that's hard to show, but you can see the dynamic brake fans at the front of the nose of the DJ there are spinning, and they actually speed up and slow down depending on how many amps you're pulling from the dynamic brake grid. Just like with the gradients and the curvatures, the curve speed warning signs and speed signs that you see are hopefully close to what they are in real life. Yeah, the clipping is the field of view slider. I had it turned right up so I could get a wide view of the cab when I was doing some testing. I forgot to put it back. This scenario is set in spring, but in summer all of this broom is yellow with flowers, and the rata that's up on the hills is red as well. So it looks quite different depending on which season you're in. There's the problem of not having sound in my headphones in the game. I've just tripped the vigilance because the timer's gone out. Right, we'll have to come to a stop and then we can reset the vigilance. Make sure the throttle's in 0 versus in neutral. And the train brakes fully applied, and then you can release the train brakes and it'll start to reset. Let's just disable vigilance for now so I don't embarrass myself further. the left there, that's the high voltage power lines which link Loco power station to the west coast. And the lines on the right are power for the signals and various phone lines for the railway. Crawl up to the signal here, and you've got to stop and change the points. Alright, points are already set, so what should happen is that after a timeout we should get a yellow. So it'll show yellow on the map here, but it'll still show red with the L for the loop on the actual signal. And now we're cleared to enter the loop. Right, so hold on. So now we've just got to head back to Aotearoa. So first thing we'll do, put the front headlight on. Now we've got to pull up to the end of the loop. Going forwards. Helps. Now with the single one automatic, when you're in the loop and you want to depart, well actually when you're even on the main, if you want to request the signal through to the next crossing loop, use the tab key and that will request to pass the signal, and that will turn green. So we've just got to stop up here. So there you go. Just request the signal. So that's the equivalent of going down to the points and pressing the plunger. But seeing as we don't have that, you can't really do that in this game. You just request the pass is the way that we've set it up. One thing I forgot to show you on the screen. Got points indicated, working points indicators that are used in the single line automatic crossing loops. So that indicates the status of the points from the loop out to the sidings. Change that point. Now we'll clear up the loop. When you're placing track, you can select with track unevenness value, which that's what controls the bump and sway in the cab. So we've tried to get a value in that gives adds to the feel of the swaying of the Loco as you're moving along. Well, I hope you can remember where you placed the mower. If you, Stefan, if you can't remember where you placed it, how are we going to know if someone's found it or not? As you can see, this is a train load of West Coast coal heading over to Canterbury. Yeah, the KBs didn't actually operate on the west coast, but yeah, once it gets to Arthur's Pass, they would have definitely had the KB on the front up until they were retired and the DJs took over. Yeah, some assets are set so that a lot of the, especially the infrastructure assets are set so that they are visible at all detail levels. So that's things like bridges, your overhead signals and all the important stuff that you need. It's mainly just the level of density of the trees and things like that change depending on what graphics density settings you've got set. Oh, looks like someone's having a bad day on the one-way bridge. On quite a bit of the line you've got to keep an eye on the gradient because there's pieces where it flattens out for a bit, and if you're not careful you can go over speed pretty quickly. Yes, the easements certainly make the track, and super elevations certainly make the track look and feel a lot nicer. It's there are some spots where the curves are just too tight and the super elevation and easements aren't used. Especially some spots in the Waimak Gorge area. But yeah, most of it we've tried to use the easements to keep it nice and smooth. And there's the cab of battery electric Loco that was used for maintenance on the overhead in the tunnel for quite a few years. Now we're going up through the loop to the back shunt, so the speed limit for the loop is 10 miles an hour, so you have to be going enough speed to make it up the back shunt, without stalling, but not too fast as to be breaking the speed limit. And that's definitely caught me out a few times when I've been trying to test this scenario. So once we finish this scenario, I'm going to show you something from one of the a DJ pack that we're working on to release after when we've finished doing all of the scenarios for it. So Stefan's been making pretty much every livery that the DJ's ever had in NZR service. Correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think we've missed any, have we, Stefan? I think there's 21 different DJ models in total for the new pack of various stages of weathering of different liveries. Oops. Well, that was a major. Oh well. We'll move on to the next scenario a little sooner. The perils of trying to do 2 or 3 things at once. Right. Find this other one. Well, you're about to see the wrath in winter, because this is what this scenario is. So, this is one of the, I'm almost certain to get the wrong name for this, but it's one of the TMS Blue we're still trying to get approval to make sure that we're allowed to have the old NZR logo on the side of the cab. Copyright of logos and stuff like that can be real tricky, so we're just trying to work that out. But as this is one of the more modern DJs, there's a few alterations, such as the air intake has been altered. There's the extra radiator header tank on the top, and in the cab you'll see there's the early radios that they had when they started to have radios in the cabs. Right, so in this scenario we're picking up a bunch of... oh, hang on. Yeah, right. Sorry about that, I didn't have the stream set to the right one. Right, so I'll try that again. So this is the one of the TMS blue liveries, and yeah, so you can see there's new engine air intakes, new header tanks, and inside the cab you've got the early radios there. So let's get this set up. Right, so in this scenario we are going down onto the Loco shed sidings to pick up a couple of racks of written off wagons, and they're going to be old wooden wagons, and they're going to be taken to the former ballast pit at the Waimakariri River Bridge, and quite a few wagons, old wooden wagons, were written off and burnt there to dispose of them. So we're just going to go through the yard and pick some wagons up and then head off to Coralin. Preemptively disable vigilance before I make a fool of myself again. Yeah, on being the early radios, they were AM ones, I'm pretty sure, so that there's there's cracks and hisses from the old AM radio. Right, so here we go, we've got to go past the points up ahead and then go on to the Loco shed siding to pick up some wagons. So along with all of the track diagrams, we tried to use S&I signals diagrams from the era as well to try and make sure we had all the correct, or as many of the correct signals in the correct locations as we could. So even things like the arrow signals down here, the arrow signals to indicate points, tried to have those, as many of those in the correct positions as we could. Right, so now let's go down to here. Alright, so there's the first of our row of victims, is this rack of four-wheel wooden wagons. First lot of wagons. Pull forward and change the points and back onto this shed bypass road, which has got another row of bogey wooden wagons for us to take. I don't think we've got a scenario that actually shows it, but the shed doors at Arthur's Pass and the shed doors in the at Otera operate. They open automatically as you approach them. So they're placed they're actually separate from the actual shed model, and they're placed as a signals object. And so when you get a certain distance towards the shed doors will open automatically. Right, so now we need to reverse back onto yard track 4, and there's a couple onto a guard's van. We just need to lock you in a cage with substance painter and a computer, don't we, Stefan? And get all of the scenery textures redone. It's a bit of a shame we didn't discover that earlier, because it made such a difference to the rolling stock. so now got to take a train of condemned wagons to Corlin. Want to see it. Yes, we do. We've both got. This has been a side hobby project for us over the last 6.5 years now. Just in between work and other life commitments, so it's taken quite a while. So we've got a green ground signal, so we can head out onto the main. Yeah, that's another advantage of the fact that those gantries are custom 3D models, is that we can have we can do the texturing and stuff a lot better, a lot more specific to the route. Barely get out of the yard and the gradient starts dropping really quickly. Yes, I can't remember how long you spent on the overhead. I think there's 4 separate sections: Arthur's Pass, 2 sections in the Otira Tunnel, and then 1 for Otira, and yeah. Well, the overhead came about because, yeah, we couldn't get the built-in tools to work, and also it wasn't going to give us as accurate a representation of the overhead as we were wanting. So that's part of the problem with this route, is some of the stuff we're just being pedantic with, and it took us way too long to get done. We hit quite a few game engine limits with this route. I think we've pushed the scenery density as far as it'll go, and yeah, there's a few other things that are near its limit. Oh yes, the power poles. So all of the telephone poles you see alongside the route, were all pretty much manually placed. Thankfully we couldn't get the tool working well enough to just place it as a loft automatically a certain distance from the track, but thankfully we could get it working enough to do all the wires manually, so that was lucky. The power lines, on the other hand, those are all individually placed poles and individual wires strung between them. So that's pretty much all the way from Aikens through to just before Coralin. It hadn't been the 66,000 volt power lines hadn't long been in, I don't think, when this route's set, so that was fairly new at that point. No, the one macro that I did use was when I was doing all of the terrain textures. Must be a really bad memory leak when you're painting terrain textures in the editor, and it just uses up more and more and more RAM until it just crashes the game. So I had to set up a macro on my computer to automatically press F2 and then enter to save the route about every minute or two, just so I could get enough work done without it crashing and then having to start what I've been working on. That was another one of those issues that the core games got that we had to work around, but it's alright, we got there. Yeah, the memory leak issue when doing the terrain textures was incredibly infuriating. To do, a couple of K's worth of textures around the track and then the game crashed and all of a sudden you're back at square one. Oh yes, once the 64-bit version of the executable, the Train Simulator executable came out, that solved a whole lot of those terrain texture and crash bugs. But for a long time it had a different one, and that was the fact that it wouldn't save changes to loft tiles correctly. So if you laid some track or altered some track, saved the game, quit and reloaded, that track just disappeared, and that was infuriating because we had little pieces that we were trying to fix, like tracks and track on the approaches to bridges, and I'd fix the track, send a patch to Stefan for him to test, and he would say, no, the track's not there. The game thinks there's track there, but there's no textures or anything showing up. And then eventually we found out that the game had a bug with the 64-bit version, but thankfully they fixed that, because without the 64-bit version you wouldn't be able to run this route, because we've got so many different assets and everything in it. Yes, autosave as core function in the game would have been very, very handy. But yeah, it's another one of those features that would be fantastic to have, but probably never ever going to happen. I think we're just approaching the Waimak Bridge. Yep. Oh, yes, sorry, Beeley Bridge. Getting my rivers muddled up. Yeah, one thing we found with placing the scenery is that we didn't realise how the detail level value worked. So it's a value between 0 and 10, and you'd assume that it was just like a percentage of the detail that's displayed. So, but it's not. It's like a random value somehow. But if you set it to 10, the asset that you place will always be displayed. So we realised this after placing a whole bunch of infrastructure stuff like bridges and signals and things like that. So we actually had to go through and open and edit the bin files for the route and do find and replace on a whole bunch of things to set the scenery detail for those assets to 10 so that they're always there. Otherwise, if you turn the scenery density down a little bit, all your signals would disappear. Well, not even all of them, like certain signals would disappear and it would look really random. Oh yes, that Arthur's Pass turntable was a nightmare for a long time. And that was to do with that 64-bit bug. We'd place it and it would get absolutely perfect, and then you'd load it up again the next day and see that the turntable wasn't there. The sim thought the object was still there, but you couldn't select it, it wasn't displaying or anything, and you had to manually go into the files, find the turntable in the tile and then delete it. Yeah. Absolute pain. One thing I like about the Midland Line, whether it's rail fanning it in real life, taking photos, or the work that we've done on the route in the simulator, it's you always get this sense of everything being tiny compared to the landscape, and it's really nice to have that feeling in the sim as well, where all of your your hills and forests and the big expanse of everything just makes the trains feel so small. Yeah, so I mainly did the terrain and the track and placing scenery objects in the route, and Stefan did all of the 3D models in the entire route. There's quite a collection. How many 3D models did you say we got to in the end for the? Was it like tens of thousands, wasn't it? Oh yes, I'll show that. Just reminded me. So, being one of the modernised DJs, it's re-engined and it's down-rated, so you can only go up to notch 8. That was to limit the power to stop them overheating. Some of them did have the higher notches, the ones that were used on the Southerner passenger train, but most of them had notch 9 and 10 disabled. And you can actually overheat the DJs in the game as well. So if you're going up a steep gradient with a heavy train and you're not careful, you pull in too many amps in the yellow or red on the ammeter, you can actually overheat it. In which case you'll be restricted to notch 1 for your power, and you won't be able to get any more than notch 1 amps, and you'll get a warning buzzer sound until the engine's cooled down. So this is another spot where the gradient levels out, so you're going downhill, you've got to take your dynamic off to stop it slowing down too much. The old guards van almost looks like it should be going to the scrap pile as well, being in that sort of condition, but that's how a lot of them were for a long time. Yeah, SG, that could have gone both ways. Either COVID has made it so that people don't have spare money to buy things like route transom add-ons, or it means that everyone's at home and they're absolutely bored, so they've got nothing to do, so sales could have been higher. But yeah, no, it just doesn't sound like it's been as good as we thought it may have been. But we don't know for sure yet. We should find out soon, hopefully, how it went for the first 3 months of the year. Yeah, sweet. Most of it seems to be modern routes in 3 major countries of USA, UK and Germany, as well as some Canadian stuff seems to be the ones that sell the most, as you'd expect, I guess. So this box just up ahead here, that's a signal block, the signal box, and what that actually is in the game is it triggers the intermediate, it's the approach trigger for the signals. So as you approach an SLA block, it will trigger the signals to go green. So that claims the green through that station as well as the track all the way through to the next crossing point. So now it's claimed the signals all the way through to Cass, but we're stopping at Coral Inn up here. Yeah, while Stefan's locked in the cage doing the retexturing of all of the scenery assets, we've also given him a list of Loco add-ons that he can start working on for the route. So that should keep him busy for the next 10 years. Dynamic to wind down before I can put it back in the power. Right. So we need to go into the loop here because we want to run around the train. So let's set the points. So if you see, we've got a red signal. The lower of these 2 red signals is the arrival signal. So that's showing red with the L light up, which means the points are set for the loop. And to proceed past it, we need to wait at the signal for 10 seconds. Pull up a bit further. Right, so after it times out, 10 seconds we're allowed to proceed past the red signal into the loop. Here we are at Coralin. Just pull up to the end of the loop and then we'll cut off and run around the train. So we're going to propel the train from here to the siding at Waimak up ahead. Right. So now we need to pull up, clear of the points, but we don't need to go out onto the main just yet, and then run down the siding to the other end of our train. Points behind us. We'll make sure the other end of the siding is set. Yes, the signals development took way longer than I originally expected. And because the New Zealand signals are in a few ways are different to overseas, it was actually easier in the long run to manually script the whole thing for both lots of signals. So that was a bit of an arduous mission, especially with the not very useful debug that the game sometimes has for the Lua scripts. Yes, the points for are in an odd spot there, the points handles, but that's where it was in real life. There wasn't enough room between the loop and the siding to have the handles, so they moved it out to the side. Right, let's go forward and couple up. Yeah, Swede scripting is a black magic to me too, and I've spent like a year or more doing the signals for this one. It's crazy. It's a lot of nights spent running a script, seeing what doesn't work, going back, trying to fix it, then test running it again. I wonder if this key works. Right, so now we're going to propel the train from here through to the siding. Yeah, with regards to the things that I've learned in terms of the scripting and stuff like that, when I get time I've been trying to add information to a wiki page so that anyone else that wants to do similar things has some information to start the torture from. It can be a real struggle at times getting it to work, but it's certainly worth it when you see the signals operate the way they should, or the way you think they should anyway. The wiki, Stefan might be able to get the link for you. Oh yeah, there we go. So beat me to it. There's not too much on it at the moment. At the moment I've been mainly putting in some information about importing terrain data to get your base terrain and stuff into the game, because that was a bit of a mission for me. There was lots of guides on how to do it for US and UK, but the same data wasn't. Oh, it was available for New Zealand, but it wasn't as high a resolution. So I had to do some trickery to convert the data formats to get it to work for the New Zealand data. Luckily it's almost all free software, apart from one piece, which isn't available on their website anymore. ReDEM was used to do the final import of the terrain tiles, but they don't have it on their website anymore, and I'm not sure where you can get it from. Yes, the data that we used to make the route initially was 8 metre resolution, so you have a height point every 8 metres. But nowadays you can get 1 metre resolution stuff for a lot of the areas. But the downside of that is that the game has actually only got an 8 metre resolution for its terrain grids. So having 1 metre resolution data probably isn't actually going to help get a nice accurate terrain anymore. We could get doomed to run on a DJ Lewis script. Yeah, I mean it's probably possible. I definitely wouldn't want to even contemplate how you could do anything like that. Just have a massive bank of indicator lights making a dot matrix display on the back wall of the cab or something. Yes, Swede, the 1 metre data is definitely what you want. You want to use, even if the game only has 8 metre, you want to try to feed it the best data you can to get the as higher quality terrain as you can. But with that limitation around the tunnels, pretty much every tunnel portal in the game, in the route, actually has a 3D model of the terrain around the tunnel portal, because it doesn't line up perfectly with the terrain grid, so it's really hard to get it to look right. So there's actually a small 3D model around the tunnel portal to get the terrain to match what we wanted it, what it needs to look like. So we're approaching Waimak Ballast Pit. I'm not sure what year the pit was actually in use for. I suspect that they didn't really get ballast out of there much after the line was completed, but like a lot of sidings in random places, it was just sort of left in place and used occasionally for various things. Yeah, one of the big problems we seem to have come across is that the game doesn't reduce the resolution of the hills off in the distance very well. So in a very hilly area like this, it can, like the route, it can really drain the computer resources a bit. Right, so we'll come to a stop. Change the points for the siding, and we want to go down onto track 3, so that's already, I think it's track 3. Yep, track 3. Yeah, there was a bug in the render distant terrain, generate distant terrain tiles thing that was generating the terrain for us, but it was generating it with really stripy textures. Eventually that bug was fixed, but yeah, it looks a lot better now. Coming down, this is the old Waimak bridge as well. The new one is on a slightly different alignment and is a concrete ballast bridge, I think, but it's on a slightly different alignment, so to reduce the curves there as well. Yeah, so as this siding was used a fair bit, they'd bring old wagons here and just burn them, and then come back later and collect all of the scrap metal. So there's a few corpses of old wagons sitting around. steps to get up. Yes, you could technically script a scenario to make a symphony of Loco horns. It would be a lot of work though. Not technically part of the scenario, but we'll better set the points back to the main. Yeah, the timing would be interesting. The timing in the game can be incorrect depending on what the FPSs are doing. So if the frames per second are really low, your intervals between calculations are all off, which can throw a whole bunch of things incorrect if you're not careful. No, that was deliberate, Stefan. I'm just demonstrating the wheel slip to everyone. You know, completely intentional. It's also hard for me to tell if I'm wheel slipping because I don't have any sound from the game for some reason. Tested it 3 or 4 times earlier today and everything was perfect, and then this evening when I went to run the game, first it wouldn't load and then it wouldn't give me sound, so I don't know what's going on. Yes, Stefan, you script the that rail freight ad to start playing over the radio randomly every so often. And this is the tile loading bug. every time it loads a new tile, which is about 1 kilometre by 1 kilometre, it can be a bit of a delay, and that's mainly due to the terrain, not the number of assets in a tile. So I think the scenario's got us crossing a Loco movement here. I'm not sure who's going to I think I'm running a bit early. Pull in and see if we've got enough room for us to stick up to our path to the videos. That's something. How many tons have you scheduled this, scripted this guards van to be? Yeah, sweet. Respect. That's exactly what we spent 6.5 years doing this for, I'm sure. Oh yeah. So that's another thing. Control W will bring up a pop-up that will tell you the weight and length of your train. So that can be handy, especially if you're creating scenarios where you want your train to be near the limit of the loading schedule for the particular section of track you're on. Should start leveling out up here. So the train weights are also as accurate as we could get, and also the locomotive performance we tried to script it, or tried to make it close to the real loading schedules for the locos on the line. So the performance is hopefully close to what the real ones were. Thing that pop-up came up reminded me that I need to stop here, otherwise I'll get a spad coming past the signal. There we go, 10 seconds of that. Yeah, the main problems with the game now, I think, is that it's still running DirectX 9, and that it's still significantly single-threaded. If they managed to get it multi-threaded and updated DirectX on it, that would make a huge difference to performance. Like the main limiting factor in running this game and the route at high graphic settings is your single core CPU performance. That's basically the one thing. stop. Now, depending on the timing, we were going to be crossing a light Loco here. Let's see where he is. Nope. He hasn't left yet. So we should be able to request a light. Should point us here. Yep. We should be able to request a light now out onto the main. Yep. So to fill it up as fast as we have to wait. So we've got the track all the way through this area now. The driver of the light Loco is probably just sitting by the fire in the outer power station, keeping warm. Yeah, this scenario is different as 3 Alpha, with the first one that was created for the new DJ pack, so still definitely in development. So, and also keeping with the accuracy of information and things like that, the line speed for all freight trains on the line was 30 miles an hour or 50 k's an hour. The passenger trains could go faster up to the posted speed limit, but freights were limited to 30 miles an hour. step back at speed a little bit, but way further away than I thought we were. Oh yes, and another case of going possibly overboard with the realism. The route has got frost scripted in, so as Stephen mentioned in the comments, overnight there's a frost value that builds up which decreases the traction on the rail, and so that makes it easier to wheel slip. And then it's not until later, as the sun comes up and the frost starts thawing out, that friction starts to come back. So you've got to be careful in early morning scenarios in winter on the route. But that's turned down pretty low generally. But if you're a glutton for punishment, you can turn it up, make it especially difficult. Poor train looks so small in the massive scenery. Yeah, there's some really cool stuff you can do with the scripting if you know, if you can work out which piece of information you can get out of the sim. Like there's a couple of things that with the signals, you might notice that the light will go out and then there'll be a brief pause before the new light comes up, and that time there's sort of a slight randomness to that. So that's, just the usual mechanical things. The relays and stuff take a slightly different amount of time each time to actuate, so there's little delays and features like that you can add into things which make it just add a little bit to the feel of it. Yeah, Stefan, that's the way you could do it. You have an invisible signal that tells the loco that it's in a section of track that's shaded or got frost on it. With the CTC signal as well, because those are controlled by a signalman as opposed to being automatic like the SLA signals, the signal doesn't necessarily go red straight away when you get to it. It goes red straight away when you get to it, but it doesn't clear straight away. So there's a random delay, I think it's between like 2 and 10 seconds for when a route is set to when the signal goes green, because there's a time that the signalman has to take to actually activate the lights for you. Yeah, so the CTC signals in Springfield, Arthur's Pass and Otera were locally operated by a signalman. The other areas outside those yards were single line automatic. One thing I wish that a game would do was change this trackside camera so it doesn't always end up sitting right on top of the track. Good shots. Right, let's go this side. Less wires. Some of the differences between the original and the modified DJs you don't quite notice at first, but there are a few subtle little differences spread throughout them that make them a bit different. And yeah, you've got to be, with the modified downrated ones, you've got to be even more careful with, because they don't have the horsepower to pick trains up when they've stopped on a grade. They're sort of low speed sluggers, so you gotta watch they don't overheat. Oh yeah. So as the Loco, if you're running the Loco with the amps in the orange zone, if you're running the Loco with the amps in the yellow or red, you quickly start to warm up your engine cooling, and as a warning you'll see there's steam start to come from the radiator header tank as it gets hot before it overheats. Yeah, the vans were fairly weren't cleaned. Obviously, they weren't really cleaned much, and so they got pretty grimy and stayed pretty grimy for a long time. And still being in the very end of the steam area, you've got a lot of steam and steam exhaust inside tunnel as well. Adds all of the soot. Yeah, the look and feel was important for the route. That's what we were trying to do, because it just makes, I don't know, it just gives you a more of a sense of immersion if you kind of have a feel of being there. Oh yeah, those river edges were a pain. Because of the previously mentioned issue with the resolution of the terrain grid, the rivers were manually carved out and have rocks to hide the edges to make it look better, because the default river tools weren't getting the effect that we wanted. Now. The last climb into Arthur's Pass is quite short, quite sharp, up to 1 in 50 or even more. Anyone that's watched the steam excursion coming into Arthur's Pass will know that this last kilometre or so up into the yard is really a real slow slog for a lot of the steam locos. Points are already set for us, so it's handy. Obviously nobody wanted to get out in the yard on such a cold day to do any shunting, so the points are already where they were when we left. No, neither of the steamers will be showing tonight. They're still a little bit away. We've got trying to get the DJ pack sorted, and then we will be able to get back into the Stephen will be able to get back into having a look at the steam locos. Although knowing what he knows now with the substance painter, I suspect some new textures for the JA and KB may be on the cards as well. Back into this bypass siding and drop off the guard's van. So this bypass siding runs from the track 4 of the yard through and onto the Loco shed, and its main use was they used to store guards vans in there, so they were just a nice way to store them out of the way when so they're not in the way when shunting. Back shunt. Make sure it's set. So the yard's got manual points, but then once you get out of the yard, a lot of the points are automatically switched by the signalman. Yeah, working booster engine on the KBs would certainly be a fairly unique feature as far as Train Simulator DLC goes. I'm not sure I've heard of any others that have got booster engines. Right, so the arrow is telling us that we can go past the signal at red, because it's indicating that we're going down onto the back shunt. You've got to be careful with the back shunts in the route, because there's no stop blocks. So you've got to be careful not to go off the end of your back shunts. So heading all the way through the yard via the loop to the west back shunt. Yeah, reference material on that booster for the KB seems to be hard to come by. It took ages for you to find the photos of the extra valves and pipes and stuff for the booster that are on the running board and various other places. To the LA side, because that's where all the signals are, easy to see. Yeah, there's a surprising number of hours of research that's gone into all sorts of different things for the route to try and get them right. Old aerial photos, old maps, lots of old photos, lots of old technical drawings and all sorts. I think both of us have got a rather large folder on our hard drive with various reference material we've used for the route. Yeah, there possibly is more research than some DTG routes, but there's they're also not as picky as us. We've probably been overly picky in a lot of places, but it was what we were trying to get for a route that we were interested in playing, so that's how it ended up. Yeah, I'm sure if DTG had people working for like half a decade for free on it, they'd end up with some good routes as well. Right, so I think this is the last instruction of the scenario. Yeah, it's not on the list. This is the last one. .6 gigabytes of reference material. Is that including all of the 3D models, or is that not including all of the various models and assets for the route? So I think got to the marker, so the route scenario is complete. Yeah, it's a beta scenario, so I think we may need to have a look at that, Stefan, because it takes away control of when it hits that last marker. So you could end up running off the end because you've got no brakes. Well, thanks very much, everyone. That's the 2 scenarios we're gonna play tonight. We'll hang around a bit and answer questions if anyone's got any questions they've got for us. Otherwise, if you head over to our Discord server, you can ask us questions there, or our Facebook page as well. We'll try to keep up with anything that's asked. So. I'll see you all later. Thanks for watching.